And I'm Paul Marshall from OPB. The race for Oregon governor looks much clearer and more crowded this week. Oregon state workers get a brief reprieve from the governor's vaccine mandate, and the city of Portland took 2 steps this week to make life easier and safer for firefighters.
We don't know when anything serious is going to happen. It could happen at any point in time. We need to be prepared. And ballistic vests such like this allow us to be prepared for any and all threats.
It's Consider This from OPB and NPR. Each Friday, we wrap up the week's news. This week, OPB's news director, Anna Griffin, is here to help us catch up.
Support for this podcast and for OPB comes from our members. Become a sustaining member at opb.org/pod. Support also comes from OHSU. OHSU Health, bringing health and wellness to more Oregonians. Now with 52 locations throughout Portland and beyond. And from Charles Schwab, Own Your Tomorrow, providing individual financial guidance matched to investors' goals. Located at Southwest Morrison and 8th in downtown Portland.
Anna, the race to replace Kate Brown as Oregon's governor isn't until next year. But this week, the decision facing voters next year became clearer.
Yeah, we had 2 big-name entries into the race this week. First, New York Times columnist Nick Kristof formed a campaign committee and quit his newspaper job. That's not quite announcing, but it's pretty darn close. Kristof is from Oregon, and after spending a very prestigious career as a journalist on the other side of the country, really often on the other side of the world, came home a few years ago to essentially bring his family's Yamhill farm into the 21st century. He undoubtedly can raise the money to compete in a statewide race. He's positioning himself as sort of a practical, moderate Democrat. There are still questions about whether he meets the residency requirement to run for governor. You have to have been here for 3 years, and whether Oregonians will consider him, frankly, a carpetbagger. The other entry into the race this week is less likely to gather national attention, but might be more intriguing and potentially disruptive. State Senator Betsy Johnson is a longtime lawmaker and very moderate Democrat known for bucking her party on issues like how to fight climate change and whether to impose tighter gun laws. She sent an email to supporters this week saying she's running as an unaffiliated candidate. That means she's offering herself up as an alternative to both the Democrats and the Republicans, and will be trying to collect about 27,000 signatures to get on the November ballot, bypassing May primaries. It's easy to see her pitch. She says Republicans are too far to the right, too enamored of Donald Trump-style nationalism, and Democrats in Oregon are just too liberal. It is going to be, if you are a political junkie, quite the year 2022. The field also already includes House Speaker Tina Kotek and State Treasurer Tobias Reed.
The governors of both Washington and Oregon have given state employees until October 18th to get vaccinated from COVID-19. But Oregon state employees were granted more time this week. Why?
Yeah, Governor Kate Brown worked out a deal with 2 very influential public employee unions to give tens of thousands of state workers basically 6 more weeks into November. A few reasons. First, practically speaking, the state is just not ready to get rid of a bunch of state employees who haven't been vaccinated. They do not have the structure in place to keep this from being hugely disruptive. We're talking about people who maintain roads, staff prisons, parks, healthcare facilities. The state also doesn't want to be embroiled in a bunch of lawsuits. They've won one legal challenge against the vaccine mandate, but there are others out there. Everyone involved is painting this as just a common sense little break. This is SEIU Local 503 Communications Director Ben Morris.
When employers listen to their workers and negotiate with them over these kind of things, you get a better outcome. We're going to see more state workers get vaccinated as a result of this agreement.
So not to be cynical, but there are also some politics involved here, Paul. Public employee unions are very powerful in Oregon. They are big-time supporters of Democrats. They turn out voters, phone calls to legislators, campaign money. Legislators, lawmakers have paid the price before when they buck the unions, when, say, in the past they voted to cut PERS benefits. No Democratic governor wants to completely alienate them.
Finally, the city of Portland announced 2 new efforts this week to change the way firefighters do their job. The first is about their safety. The second is about the kinds of calls they handle. What's new?
So let's take one moment and talk about what it is like to be a firefighter before we get into these 2 new programs. Firefighting is a lot more complicated than people realize. They are usually the first people to respond to any 911 call about a health problem. If you pick up the phone and call 911 in Portland, for example, saying my spouse is having a heart attack, you're going to have an ambulance and a fire truck show up. They're also called into a lot of emergency situations that are dangerous. So that gets to the first new change. Firefighters in Portland are getting bulletproof vests. You heard Isaac McLennan, the vice president of the Portland Firefighters Association, the union, at the top of the segment, talking about just the uncertainty of their job. Cities like Seattle and San Francisco have already taken this step. The second change is related to another reality of life for firefighters. The bulk of calls they get now are not about things being on fire. They are medical emergencies. And they're increasingly overwhelmed by the number of people who are calling for medical situations that actually don't merit calling 911. People are using 911 and the ensuing trip to the ER for low acuity healthcare. Here's Fire Chief Sarah Boone on the problem.
A portion of our community members are unsure how to access healthcare services and making 911 their only option.
So Portland is going to approach this by working with a nonprofit called Care Oregon. It's a group that provides healthcare to people in areas where there isn't a lot of access. On a pilot project, they're going to begin training firefighters to handle low-level medical problems, sending teams out on non-emergency calls. The idea is that these firefighters will do some low-level healthcare and also educate people who are calling 911 when they probably don't need to about how to find a primary care physician. What this is going to do, it's going to free up firefighters to focus on actual emergencies. Also, hopefully clear up a backlog of low acuity cases at hospitals, something that drives up healthcare costs for all of us.
That's Anna Griffin. I'm Paul Marshall. Thanks for joining us for Consider This from OPB and NPR. For the latest news from Oregon and Southwest Washington at any time, visit opb.org. And join us next Friday right here for a summary of the biggest news of the week.